Hi, my name is Bryan Stephen, and this is my case study for Values Aligned Leadership. And our case study is the Ford Firestone failure. So, if you could think of one product that you could live without, what do you think that would be? Some people would say cell phone, but most people, like myself included, would say that my vehicle is one of the things that I could not live without. People use it to get to work. They use it to do take kids to the store, take family vacations. But when you get in that vehicle, do you really think about the rubber underneath you that is taking you from point A to point B? Most people don't until it comes time to replace it. The sales of automobile tires has become a billion-dollar industry, and some companies such as Discount Tire, Big O, and Goodyear survive strictly on tire sales alone. But what happens when there's an issue or design flaw? Do the manufacturers that make those products take responsibility for their actions? 9 times out of 10, probably not. This case study is the ultimate tragic relationship between Ford Motor Company and the popular Ford Explorer sport utility vehicle, and Firestone tires, and the possible design flaws in which they were so extensive and prone to failure that they caused the deaths of hundreds of unsuspecting motorists in the early part of the 1990s. I'll discuss the history relationship between Ford Motor Company and Firestone tires, and how these two companies have prided themselves so much on history and reputation, put money and that reputation before the safety of the consumers that they were dedicated to serve. Firestone Tire and Rubber Company was founded in 1900 by Harvey Firestone. The company's first client was none other than Henry Ford. He purchased 2,000 sets of tires for his first Model A automobile. The initial business transaction was the beginning of a long-term relationship that would span the course of nearly a century, where Firestone would eventually become one of the largest tire manufacturers in the world. In the United States, nearly 318 million tires are sold annually, which accounts for upwards of $20 billion of profit for the industry. Over the span of the past 50 years, tire manufacturers have struggled providing solid products that are free from defect and safe for consumers. Many companies such as Kelly Springfield, Uniroyal, Bridgestone, Cooper Tires, and General have all had to resort to recalls due to failure of their products, such as cracked sidewalls, pinch points on their tires resulting in safety issues, and tires deflating at highway speeds. Total recalls from these companies stood alone at nearly 6.5 million tires for various safety issues. So it's suffice to say that the tire industry has had their fair share of problems. Firestone encountered its first of many issues in 1978 when it had to recall 16.5 million tires, one of the largest tire recalls in U.S. history, due to excessive adhesive, which caused tread separation and led to nearly 500 blowouts. If you take a look at the picture here, this tread separation is where the majority of the tires failure happened. It would come separated from the sidewall, and then the tread would actually be removed from the tire itself, and would done at highway speeds. This was a detrimental effect to the vehicle it was driving. This recall, along with the additional internal company strife over the next decade, affected Firestone financially, and they had to find a bailout. In 1990, Bridgestone USA, which was a subsidiary of the Japanese company Bridgestone, purchased Firestone for $2.5 billion and was able to right the ship for a short period of time. But unfortunately for Firestone's new owners, the tire woes continued. Between 1992 and 1998, Firestone yet again voluntarily recalled over 6 million tires due in part to tread separation. And it was at that time that the century-long relationship between Ford and Firestone began to unravel. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration began receiving reports of a high number of vehicles involved in rollover accidents due to the possibility of tire issues. By 2000, the claim of nearly 300 accidents, most of them involving Ford Explorer, which came standard with the tires on them, began finding their way to both Ford and Firestone. Between the two companies, the finger pointing ensued. Each company stated the other was at fault. Ford claimed that Firestone created a substandard tire, and Firestone in turn said Ford's vehicle was unsafe and did not meet NHTSA requirements. Firestone's claim stated that the passenger tires were safe and they were manufactured correctly. Ford said that their design was done properly and that the blame lied elsewhere. Many months of heated legal debates ensued to determine who was at fault. Both Ford and Firestone hired independent analysts to review where the information was correct. In August of 2000, after hearings in both the Senate and Congress, Firestone agreed to recall an additional 6.5 million of its Wilderness AT tires manufactured between 1993 and 2000 that were still in circulation and utilized by consumers. Ford also agreed to recall all of its vehicles that were sold with Firestone tires and replace them with like tires of a different manufacturer. After much debate, there was further evidence presented during the Senate hearings through independent investigation by Firestone that Ford may have been at fault. It is possible that Firestone tire issues may not have been the only factor that caused a multitude of accidents and fatalities. Exploring all options. Ford Motor Company has been at the forefront of automotive innovation since its inception in the 1800s. From passenger cars and convertibles to trucks and even commercial vehicles, Ford has been a leader in nearly every market they've encountered. In the late 1980s, the passenger car market appeared stagnant. The big three, Chrysler, Dodge, and Chevrolet, struggled for the next great idea. The front office at Ford Motor Company found an idea that might work in its favor. The company was looking for a replacement for its aging and accident-prone Bronco 2 platform, and introduced a sport utility vehicle was in its inception. The executives at Ford wanted to ensure that they were leading from the front, so they pressed the designers to come up with a cost-effective platform that they could put into production immediately, but not cost the company an arm and a leg to design. Ford designers, feeling the pressure, came up with a box-type vehicle that could utilize the existing platform from the Ford Ranger, thus saving them both time and money, and allowing the company to bring the vehicle to consumers far quickly and ahead of its competitors. The solution was also the problem. The design of the Explorer was roomy and comfortable for passengers, but the vehicle was tall and boxy, leaving a high center of gravity for the vehicle to be unstable at highway speeds. These issues, paired with the fact that it was placed on a pickup frame, which had a tendency to flex and the cab embedded independently, was a recipe for disaster. Most other sport utility vehicles are also built on truck underbodies. Indeed, the death toll rollover rate was considerably higher than Ford Explorers, but the Explorer became the most visible example because it was mated with Firestone's tires, so the two together became a deadly combination. The findings of the Explorer issue were not made public until much later, and because Ford did not want the design issue of the Explorer to be made public information, fingers were pointed at Firestone for the faulty design manufacturing process. This is just one example of a late model Ford Explorer mated with Firestone tires. Nearly 300 fatalities from Ford Explorer rollover vehicles during this period of time caused the concern for both the federal government, both Ford and Firestone. While much attention had been focused on the tires, the accidents had also continued to raise questions. In fact, tire problems have caused a tenth of more than the 1,200 Explorer rollover deaths since 1994. The problem was that Ford Explorers mated with other tires, such as Bridgestone and Cooper in general, were also prone to rollover as well. Ford could not explain that reason because the tires that were on the vehicle were not solely that of Firestone. Firestone conducted its own investigation, and the findings shifted much of the blame for the deadly rollover across the nation from Bridgestone to Ford and the Explorer, which was at that time the world's most popular sport utility vehicle. Ultimately, both companies shared the blame, but neither directly nor indirectly took blame for the actual cause itself. One conclusion stands out amid all the examples of mutually assured destruction. While neither Ford Explorers nor Firestone tires might be unusually dangerous in their own right, paired together, it is sometimes proved as a lethal combination. Business minus the moral part. It would appear, based on the findings of the independent research done through organizations such as the Center for Auto Safety, that both the vehicles and the tires were unsafe. Paired them together with a deadly Pairing them together, was a deadly combination. And the tragic part is that both companies knew about the separate issues, but failed to notify both the federal government or inform the general public. This may have been done out of fear of lost revenue and market share, and one thing is clearly evident: both were morally and ethically derelict in their duties when they kept this information under lock and key. Morality, as defined by Arnold et al., is all concerned with the social practices defining right and wrong. Morality cannot be purely personal policy or code, and is certainly not confined to the rules and professional codes of conduct adopted by corporations. Both Ford and Firestone knew what they were doing was morally and ethically wrong. Yet, instead of losing money and tarnishing their respective reputations, they chose to push forward and continue to danger not just American consumers, but consumers around the world who were also encountering the same issues. It is apparent that the government oversight that exists to prevent these type of accidents was lacking in that oversight, or simply unable to prevent anything from happening. After it was all said and done, the NHTSA was only able to impose a fine of $925,000, which was the maximum allowable by law at the time. To a billion-dollar company, this equates to a simple slap on the wrist. This would appear offhand as an incentive to withhold information again, because it would seem that the extent of the reach of authority of the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, at least in this case, isn't very far. Ford and Firestone eventually severed the century-old relationship based upon nothing more than the inability for either company to risk further damage to their reputations. Wealth obtained by fraud dwindles, but the one who gathers by labor increases. Proverbs 13:11. In conclusion, it would appear that the lack of ethics has become commonplace in business. Whether it's through defrauding stockholders or deceiving the public in order to maintain reputation, business today is devoid of ethics and morality. Ford and Firestone knew of these issues with both vehicles and tires, as previous evidence revealed. The hearing in both the House and Senate had proven that each company failed to divulge the information to the government or provide any assistance short of recalls to consumers affected by the issues. I was able to identify through several sources that even though both companies blamed each other for the nearly 300 fatalities in this issue, both are culpable and require a share of the blame. The federal government, specifically the NHTSA, was founded in order to prevent these types of issues, and at the very least, punish the guilty parties. Firestone's gross revenue for fiscal year 2002 was nearly $7.6 billion. So with a fine of $925,000, it would lead some to believe that doing the right thing is not always the first idea that is brought to the table. I'm Bryan Stephen. Thank you for reviewing my case study of the Ford Firestone failure.